Welcome to Banking on Experience, the one-stop shop for all your financial services tips and tricks, the future of business and the future of the customer. Here is your host from CRM Next.
Welcome to another episode of Banking on Experience. I'm your host today, James Gilbert from CRM Next. I'm excited about our guest today. We have Lorraine Rinaldi on the podcast today. Lorraine is an expert storyteller, and that's going to be the topic of our discussion today. Lorraine, do you want to give a quick introduction to our listeners on who you are?
Oh, sure. And thank you very much. I am really thrilled to be on the podcast. I love Banking on Experience. That just says so much. That title right there. Wow, we could talk an hour just about that. My background basically started, I'll give you the quick version, in broadcast media. And for years, I was broadcast talent. I say that with air quotes. So some journalism, entertainment, a little combination of everything, mostly radio. I did a lot of work on the side in PR and storytelling, a lot of writing. So little by little, I was hired a lot to do some consulting, some editing, ghostwriting, helped several people write their books and get those to market, and jumped in and out of corporate America during that time of consulting. I'm back to mostly just consulting now, but I work basically in the corporate realm. I have some FI experience, having had worked for several years for a credit union in the marketing function, and just loving life and always trying to help people get their story out. You know, it's amazing as time forges on and all the various channels and methods we have for telling our story, the simple art doesn't change all that much. Do you know what I'm saying? The delivery changes, but it's just like relationship building, right? And you deal with a lot of people with sales and that sort of thing. The techniques change, but the premise stays the same, right? So I'm getting way ahead, but I anticipate we're going to talk a little bit about that. And I'm so excited because you'd sent me some questions to look at prior to our meeting today, and they just inspired so much thought. So I'm jumping at the bit over here.
No, I mean, you're spot on. I mean, I think it's interesting how for our credit union audience, it's also important to note that Lorraine writes on the CUInsight. So if you ever want to get a feel for her writing style, her creative, that's a great place to go, especially specific to the credit union space. So I wanted to point that out as well, because that's actually how I found her. And it's interesting because credit unions oftentimes will have like a brand promise, or they'll have a very unique sort of mission to who they are. And a lot of times it ties to the community or something that they want to be known for, but they have a tough time bringing in the members so that they can actually truly articulate that. So what are some ways that you think credit unions are missing the mark in telling their story?
Well, I generally think, and having dealt, working for one credit union, but dealing with a lot of them. And let me just backtrack a minute. Shout out to CUInsight. I got on board with them. They were somewhat a fledgling organization, and they were inviting people to contribute to their publication, and it's all online. And I said, sure, this is a great way to promote our brand just by affiliation. Well, I'm almost 2 years away from being so heavily involved with the credit union industry, but I'm still writing for them because I love their mission. I love what they're doing. And I love that they have hundreds of community writers who contribute thoughts and a lot of great information. So they're doing it right. The credit union industry, I think, by and large, and this is a huge generalization, there's always exceptions to the rule. I feel like they're a little bit shy about promoting themselves. I think there's some fear there. I think there's that, oh boy, if we get too big, the banks are going to come after us. We're a 501c3. That's a whole other issue. But let's just stick to the marketing side of it. I think they try to tell their stories, but they are also at the same time reluctant to brag about themselves. And if you're in business, that's kind of what you got to do. If you want to get noticed, you have to get comfortable with self-promotion. And I've seen this a lot, and I just don't get it. They're really reluctant to put themselves out there.
I'm with you. Like, there's so many local credit unions here in Utah where I'm located. I know them. I see their brand. But I oftentimes don't interact with them because they don't interact with me. So many times consumers for a credit union or a potential member is not going to know or do business with that credit union unless there's an opportunity that arises. A perfect example is right before COVID happened. We went out and we became first-time RV owners. I didn't know that who our financial institution was going to be that they were going to pick, but they happened to pick a credit union that was here in Utah. I knew who they were, but I had never done business with them. But the experience that they created for me through that whole process, right in the middle of COVID, was so important to what they preach to their members. They delivered on it. And it was so powerful for me that it actually made me switch a lot of my banking from a huge banking corporation to this credit union. So the power of being able to tell the story, but not just tell it, but act on it, I think is also extremely important.
So what you're saying is that they proved to be everything that they promoted themselves to be.
Exactly.
Now, are they using your story as a case study? Because that's just phenomenal. You're handing it to them on a plate.
It's funny. I actually reached out to them and I said, look, I had a really cool experience and I'm a marketer, so I know that you guys would want this. Hence why I haven't mentioned their name, but they haven't taken advantage of that yet.
This is what I'm saying. Why?
I mean, you're right, though, right? So that brings us kind of to another question that I had for you, which is, what are the next steps that credit unions can take to be better storytellers? And how can they act on the storytelling that they're giving to their members?
A lot of this is conjecture. So let me tell you this, first of all. I think that credit unions, in order to stay compliant with their mission, that is people helping people, right? These are not-for-profits. Any revenue generated through transactions with a credit union is going back to the credit union, going back to the members who own the institution. I don't know how many members realize they actually have ownership in this institution. You know, not ownership that they can sell, so it may not seem real, but the whole idea being that credit unions, the benefit that they have over a bank is that their fees are lower, they have better savings rates, better, lower interest rates usually. And so they try to, theoretically, if they're doing it right, they're keeping their expenses down. Being in the business, we know that credit union employees are on average paid probably at a lower rate than other financial institution employees. Okay. So all this is because of, they're people helping people. Great. That said, it is a business. They do need to invest in the business. They do need to invest in the marketing and do it properly. They can't just rely on, we've always been in business, so we're always going to keep doing it this way and we will continue to grow. And you will continue to grow, but the competitiveness and the rate at which things happen in 2020 are so much more intense than they were just 20 years ago in 2000. And of course, 40 years ago, right? And the credit unions are almost, 90 years in the making. The first credit union, I can't even remember the date, but I know the whole credit union idea, the concept is just over 80 years old, right? So why not compete with the big banks? There are so many opportunities. When I got involved with the credit union was 2014. So we were post the big bank, debacle of the country, that the whole 2008, 2009 crash and the too big to fail banks. And so there was still great opportunity there to show your differentiator as a credit union. We're in that same mode again. This is just such a ripe opportunity with the whole buy local. You see what this COVID has done to our country and our economy. It has torn us apart, not the illness itself, but the reaction to it, the mismanagement on the local level and so many levels of closing this, leaving that open, all the confusion. And it's just all hyping up again. And we can talk, for days about why, but forget about that. It is what it is. So how do you embrace that if you're a small business? Unfortunately, a lot of small businesses can't embrace it because their local government is forcing their hands, either they're forced to shut or, whatever. So we're going to see a lot of small businesses go out of business. We're going to see a lot of small businesses barely make it. They're going to need some loaners. Do they want to go to the Bank of Americas or do they want to go to the local credit union or the local financial institution, a small community bank? This is an opportunity for community banks, for credit unions to really shine because A, they're on the ground, they can service these people. B, a lot of consumers who are still trying to support local business, they want to support local. You don't need the buy local logo right now. I see it. I don't know if you're seeing it, James, but a lot of people are like, okay, it's been 6 months of this lockdown almost thing. And all I can do is go to the big box stores because they're the only places that are open. Mm-hmm. And, I had a friend reach out to me a week ago and say, hey, there's a farmer's market open down the street. Why don't you come with me? I'm trying to support the local. And I'm like, yes, definitely. I'm not going to go to the big box store to buy groceries. I'll go to the farmer's market. And I did. And I simultaneously, I'm exchanging emails with you, and we're talking about the whole banking movement and the community banks right now. Well, why wouldn't any business or any consumer support the community banking just as they're supporting the local grocery store or whatever it is? So I think it's a huge opportunity right now, but you got to act now. You sound like an infomercial, or you're going to miss out.
You're right, though. And it's interesting how undersold right now credit unions are in this crisis. They're doing so much and helping so many people financially to get through this situation. And it's not talked about enough. And I know that every fiber of the being of a credit union doesn't want to sell that part, right? I get it. And I get why they don't want to. But I had this conversation with some folks internally the other day about how credit unions don't want to sell themselves and they don't want to be seen as salespeople. It makes total sense. But I think it's just a matter of repositioning yourself. You don't have to necessarily sell yourself to just say, hey, look, we can make sure that you don't have to sell yourself. And we can make sure that you're just providing a better member experience and you're involving your community more. That's not selling yourself. That's delivering on the promise that you have.
Exactly. So don't think of it as a sale. Think of doing what you're in business to do. And you got to embrace it. If you're going to grow or you're going to stagnate, or you choose. What is it? What's your vision? I used to say 5 years ago, I said, now's the time to look at a 2020 vision 5 years out. Well, we're in 2020. Nobody would have ever envisioned this mess that we're in now. We would have easily envisioned the huge, wonderful economy that we were enjoying up until COVID, right? Up until February, March. And, I don't know anybody that can say, what is this going to look like, at the end of 2020? I think it eventually does go away, but with all the civil unrest and everything, are we going to lose America? I don't know, but I know this much. There's a lot of small businesses. Behind every small business, there's a family that owns it. There are people that work there that depend upon it. There are people that, the consumers that depend upon it. So where are the support systems that are going to help, hold that business up? We're not talking about a business. We're talking about people. So there's your opportunity for the credit union. And another thing, James, is, credit unions have a reputation, and it's pretty well known among credit unions that unlike other businesses and other fields and other FIs even, they have a sense of community where they work together. They allegedly don't compete against each other. Now, of course, they're competing against each other. There's more than one credit union in every community. But they all have their different angles. Some were born of a particular organization. They service a select employment group, and others are community chartered. But there's always opportunity for them to work together. So pull your resources and let's see some kind of blitz advertising for the credit union movement, period. It's done, but I still feel like it's done in secret because as I'm not as much in that realm, and I'm not a consumer of cable television or television at all, really, believe it or not, having a broadcast background. I really don't consume much TV. So I'm not seeing the advertising. What's the best way to reach somebody like me, 54 years old, on social media constantly? And I'm not saying that's the end all, but what's a better way to reach me? I mean, I'm asking you, what do you think is a good way to reach somebody like me? And I might be an outlier, but there's other people that could use their services. How would you reach me?
Well, I think in today's world, especially with everything that has happened with COVID, I do think that we are now in a shift of a rebellion almost, I kind of refer to that because Mark Schaefer wrote a book. It's called Marketing Rebellion. Great book, by the way. If you're a marketer, that's an excellent book to read. But one of the things that he talks about in there is how there are shifts with crisis that happens, and then the economy and people, how they consume and buy changes. And we're seeing that firsthand. Now more than ever, you have to be really strong in your digital presence. You have to be really strong in your communications through multiple channels. So you know why this credit union won our business even more than just the RV that we purchased? The reason why they did is because they were ready to communicate to me in the channels that were important. I didn't have time. I just assumed a new role here at CRM Next as an executive. So I was in the thick of my role. I made that clear to them. And they're like, you know what? Don't worry about it. We'll work with you through text. Can you text in some of your meetings? Is that okay? I said, heck yeah. What do you need from me? And we literally signed up all 4 of my kids with a checking account and a savings account. We switched over the 4 checking and savings accounts that I had at this big bank over to Mountain America. There, I said their name. and it was just a beautiful thing, because it wasn't so much that the organization was ready to do that, but this individual who was handling my specific case could do it. She was not afraid to offer that communication method. She wasn't afraid to ask, hey, what ways can I work better with you? So we literally did all of this through text and email. I didn't have a single conversation with her until 2 weeks after we had opened everything up. That is amazing. And that's the type of world that I think we're shifting to. We're shifting to digital first. And, you know, for such a long time, banks and credit unions have talked about digital transformation. I absolutely hate that term, because I just think that it's been overused. But guess what? You're forced to do it now. You don't have a choice. You have to do it, because guess what? Your branches are closed. How are you going to communicate with your members?
Yeah, there's that. That's for sure. And you see them adapting pretty readily. But a couple of things that you said there that really struck me. One is, there was a particular person who reached you who was ready and able and willing to build that relationship with you. And everything, and this, I think I started out saying, you know, not so much, but what's old is new again. The relationships, and it comes down to, and the bigger your organization gets, the harder it is to control how many employees are really good relationship builders. Therein lies your sales. Therein lies your marketing. And you don't have to say, hey, you know, we're selling this, we're selling this. You just have to be, like you said, James, prepared. You just have to be ready to say, oh, wait, you're buying an RV and you need a loan. You need we can do that. How many children do you have? And what are their accounts now? And you know, what rates? Well, we have this rate. You know, I'm sure that was an easy sell. And I wonder if you weren't kind of a little bit sick of the big box bank, you know, the too big to fail bank that you might have been with.
Oh, I was.
Tell you. So again, that lends to my other point. This is a great opportunity. You know, nothing against Home Depot and Lowe's, but why were they allowed to stay open, but the garden center down the street couldn't? Why was I forced to buy my plants this spring at Home Depot? Again, nothing against them. Why couldn't the nursery, the local nursery, open?
Not only that, Lorraine, but we sacrificed quality in that. I mean, I don't know about you, but I had to buy all my stuff from Lowe's, and everything died way before it normally would from a normal nursery.
I'm dealing with that as well. Yes, you're absolutely right. So again, that whole buy local, what a great opportunity for community banking institutes to really glom onto that right now and sell it. And don't be afraid to sell it. And when I say sell it, you know, not in your typical way, build those relationships. I don't know, a recent article that I had posted in CUInsight, you probably saw, came from a conversation in a networking group. One of the guys in the group actually worked for a large bank, and he's like a senior VP of business sales, or I'm not sure his exact title, but that's what he does, big business loans and whatnot. And he said the first question he asks people, do you know your banker? And I'm like, well, who doesn't know who they bank with? He said, no. I'm not talking about the institution name, the person that you deal with. And I said, how about that? You know, can you by name tell me your banker? Like, I bet you can name that person that helped you, James, right? You don't have to, but I'm just saying, you know her name. You probably know her last name. You might know something about her family makeup because you probably have had conversations. That's what it takes in this world where there's so much noise. And I said to you, how do you reach somebody like me who doesn't consume cable TV or any television, or very, very little, I should say? Another way, what's old is new again. I'm a direct mail person. If you send, because I get so little mail anymore, that if you send me something and it's eye-catching enough, but it's not an out-and-out sales piece, but you have the right, it doesn't necessarily have to be a letter, but if it's the right postcard with the right zinger of a headline on it, you got my attention. And then, of course, like I said, I'm on social media a lot. But there again, I tune out a lot of the ads, but I don't tune out people. So if there's a connection to be made, so again, are you investing as an institution in your people? Are you hiring the right people, enough people? Are you afraid of another $100,000 salary because, oh my gosh, that's really going to crimp our budget? Really, what's it going to bring you? I'd rather spend that $100,000 on a salary or two than on, random ads that are, aren't bringing a return on that investment. So that's my theory.
This actually brings me to another point that I wanted to talk about with you, and that's how credit unions can make this fun. You bring up direct mail, and by the way, I'm a huge fan of direct mail. I love it. It's a primary part of our strategy and has been primary part of my strategy everywhere I've been. This is actually a really unique way to make it fun. It's one thing to send a handwritten note. I know a lot of credit unions do that. It's one thing to send a postcard saying happy birthday. That's great, right? It's a whole nother thing to then include a small little gift that's fun. A good example of this, there was a company in the B2B space that reached out to me. They've been trying to sell me a little while on their software. I obviously haven't had a ton of time, but you know what? I gave them the time of day, and they asked me what my address was, and they knew that I had kids. So they sent me a piñata full of candy.
Oh, that's great.
I mean, it probably cost them $6 to do. That was it. Maybe less. And they sent me a piñata. It had a computer-generated note on it that just said, "Hey, James, I thought your kids might enjoy this." That's how you can make it fun. Have fun with the pieces that you're sending out to your members. Have fun with the pieces that you maybe net new prospects that might be interested, or that might be at a different institution. Send them something, catch their eye, and that's how you can win them over.
Agreed. I love that idea. I'm going to share that one, the piñata. And go one better and make sure all the little candies are wrapped with your branded, your branded company logo and whatnot. That'd be great.
Lorraine, what are some other ways that you think credit unions can make it fun?
Make it fun. Well, I think that there is still, and there are some, again, there's always outliers and exceptions to the rule. By and large, the credit union industry, I think, is still viewed as your grandfather's financial institution. There are some that are breaking out of that. Credit unions really want to target millennials because they, by and large, have an aging population. So how do we target millennials? Well, they get those who have young children, and they engage those young children, right? They do a lot of community service, a lot of education. The credit union I was affiliated with, huge into community education. So that's great because you're reaching young people that way. There's a credit union in Washington I had the pleasure of working with, and they're out of Olympia, OB Credit Union. They originally were a select employment group credit union for Olympia Beer, which no longer exists. The marketing VP there, Lee, is just a genius. He has had so much fun. They created a whole branch with just the beer taps from the old Olympia beer. OB is just, they think outside the box, to be cliche. They just have a lot of fun with their members. So now the taps obviously don't work. They're in the teller line, right? It's set up like a bar, the teller line. It's just really cool. And I'll have to send you a link, and maybe you can link it to this podcast just to see. There's a credit union in Florida too, and I can't remember the name. I remember coming across it years ago. I would say it was a mid-sized to larger credit union, but not like a huge one. And they had the most innovative website that I'd ever seen in the FI space. Just really cool and user-friendly, but sleek and modern. And I thought, wow, that's how you do it. Not over encumbered with pages and click here, and here to get one, It was simple to use and really sleek. So things like that, I think, are fun because you're staying with the times, you're showing your personality. I think that's another thing that credit unions kind of seem timid about, and they shouldn't, because they're community owned. They can have personality, and the personality for a credit union in Utah, where you are, is going to be so different from the personality of a credit union in Philadelphia, where I am. So embrace that. It's wonderful. And even though, sure, you can live in Philly and you can be a part of a credit union in Utah because everything is online and digital, but that doesn't mean that you have to forego your identity. We all gravitate toward different things, for whatever reason. I might want to join your credit union because I just think it's cool for, I like that. It resonates with me. So I would say definitely have some personality. And that's interesting too, because that comes from within, right? That comes from your leadership team. What's their personality? Sometimes you have to fake it till you make it. You have to adopt a personality.
No doubt about it. And sometimes that personality can be drawn out from the promise that you're making. I'll use our brand promise at CRM Next, so I'm not putting any other company on the line. But when I came on, I noticed we didn't really have a promise. So the first thing we did was we created this promise of simplify work, drive growth, and deliver on experience, right? Mm-hmm. There are 3 core areas that we know that we could deliver on. So do the same thing at your credit union. Build a promise that you can actually deliver on. And I think the best way that you can make it fun is keep it simple. Like that company that sent me the piñata, that's pretty simple. Piñatas have been around forever. That's not new. It's not necessarily out of the box creative, right? It's just they came up with an idea. They're like, let's send them a random gift that their kids would enjoy. I mean, my kids now they're like asking me, Dad, when are you going to get the next piñata? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if I am going to get another one. But that's part of, I think, creating an environment where you can have a lot of fun but be creative, is keeping things simple and not overcomplicating it.
And to really visualize, I just saw a TED Talk earlier today. Actually, I'll share this link with you as well, making notes here, on vision statement versus a vision board, if you will. And the idea being that whatever way your leadership is taking your organization, you need to have a vision. But it can't just be a pithy statement, because you'll never be able to, get other people to see that vision in one statement the way you're seeing it. You have to really draw it out. I thought, that's a pretty good concept. As marketer, we hear about positioning statements and mission statements and vision statements, and it all sounds good. And we get into this rut where we're checking off the box. Do we have this statement? Do we have that statement? We got it. Yeah. But does everybody really see it? Is everybody really on the same page? Chances are, no, they're not. So if you're an organization that has a vision and you want to draw the right people to that vision, okay, and knowing at the same time you're going to repel some people, and that's okay, because if you're going to get there in 3 years, 5 years, you need the right people on that team. That means your consumers, your members, your employees. So what does that look like? And, that takes some time and effort, and it's all part of your marketing. And it's, again, this is where your internal marketing and your external marketing come together. And they're really not separate, because you need to, to borrow from Jim Collins, have the right people on the bus in the right seats. and you said this off air, and we were talking about marketing and bringing people in. Is everybody happy in their role? Are they in the role that best suits them? And are they in a role that best suits our organization and our vision? Sometimes it takes a little shifting around. And, when we're reluctant to do that, we stagnate. So, and it could be fun. You mentioned, how do we make it more fun? It could be fun to have that expectation that, okay, it's that time of year or that time in our X long cycle, 2-year cycle, 3-year cycle, where we're going to reevaluate, and then you put the questions out and you get everybody's buy-in, and nobody is shunned for their ideas. That's huge too. Do you see that a lot in companies where you sit at a table and people are afraid to speak up because they're afraid they're going to be laughed at, mocked, and anything they say can and will be held against them, Yeah,
it's true. And I'm actually glad you brought up the stuff that we were talking about off air, because It's something that I am very passionate about. Every time I've come into a leadership position, the first thing I always ask, and I told you this off air, is I interview each one of the folks on my team one-on-one, and I ask them, do you love what you're doing today? And if you don't, what would you love to do? I think that there's so many people that are stuck in a role, and they can't do anything about it because, one, their leaders never talk to them about it. And number two, their leaders don't allow them the ability to grow into a different area where maybe they want to explore. I can tell you, the previous company I was at before Cisco and before CRM Next was a company called CloudCherry. And we did this exercise, and every single person on the team switched roles. Everybody.
Oh, cool.
Because nobody was in a role that they were happy with. I had designers who wanted to get into marketing operations. I mean, think about that for a second. A designer wouldn't even touch data and analytics, normally in almost any organization. And here we had a designer that wanted to get into marketing ops and learn more about analytics and be a thought leader in analytics. And they did. And that's the fun part about, I think, also leading as an organization, and a marketing department within a credit union can do the same thing. It doesn't mean that you have to create these net new roles or jobs. It just means you have to morph your team into something that they actually enjoy and love. And guess what that means? The product that you produce and how you market will take care of itself. The quality that you put out will take care of itself. You have to worry less and less about that because the people that are behind it are going to love it even more.
Yeah, they're passionate about it, right?
So I know you mentioned OB as a credit union that you feel like is doing this really, really well out of Washington. You mentioned a credit union, not by name, but there was one out of Florida that has a really good website.
Yeah.
If we had to package everything that we've been talking about today, telling their story really, really well, having a good promise, delivering on that promise, making sure that the members are not only seeing that promise, but also that the people that are delivering it are having fun doing it. What credit union is doing that today?
Oh, wow. James, honestly, there's probably a bunch. And if I try to name one, I'm going to exclude another. And I don't want to be on that seat. I'm sorry. I'm going to take a pass on that question. Yeah, several come to mind right now that have stood out to me over the years, but I actually have a bank that comes to mind that's doing something right. Can I share that with you? Now, this is a larger bank, but it's not a great big bank, right?
Yes.
They're based out of Wilmington, Delaware, and it's WSFS. Okay. It was once Wilmington Savings Fund Society, and everybody local, because I'm in Philadelphia, which is not far from Wilmington. It's a tri-state region, the Philadelphia tri-state. They call it Southern New Jersey, Delaware, and Southeastern Pennsylvania. So this bank, WSFS, they wanted to get away from the Wilmington Savings Fund Society, and I'm going back years, and they just wanted to be known as WSFS. Well, what did the locals do? They called it WSFS. I had a conversation with their lead marketing person about 4 years or so ago, and he was telling me, yeah, we hate when people say WSFS. And I'm like, why? That's so cool. Like, embrace it. Years later, what do I see? I'm just in this last year and a half or so, the billboards all along the I-95 corridor, and I'm talking East Coast language, okay? They actually spelled out phonetically. Their colors are green and white, and it was a very plain billboard that said WSFS, and then in parentheses underneath, the phonetic spelling of WSFS, right? They embraced it. And I wrote him a note. I said, I love what you're doing. This is great. He said, thanks so much. And I'm like, this is finally, hey, the locals gave it to you. You know what? Use it. They have since acquired other banks and other little local banks. They're a pretty good size, but they're not Bank of America, which is good. If they become that, then that could be a problem, or Wells Fargo or something. But and I say the same with credit unions. Do that. Embrace it. Embrace whatever the locals, whatever nickname you were given. You might feel like, that's so local yokel, and that's why not embrace it now? Most people that live in this tri-state, they vacation down the New Jersey shore, okay, the beaches along southern New Jersey. A lot of airplane ads, little airplanes go by with their ads for local restaurants or whatnot. I've seen Wisfis on these airplane ads, and I just think it's great. So that's an example. They're growing into Pennsylvania huge. I know that they were largely a Delaware bank that has just really expanded, and I don't know what their goal is, but they're growing. They're several billion in assets, so it's no small institution by any means. But that's just an example, and I'm sure there are hundreds of other examples. FIs listening to us right now, I would say, if the locals gave you a nickname, heck, go for it. Enjoy it,
I love that example because I think it's true. I mean, we tend to forget. I shouldn't say we tend to forget. That's a generalization, but I think that sometimes we get out of the realm of possibilities that we really are here to serve the local folks anyway, right?
Absolutely. And, it's funny. My husband has a business account with a large bank, and that bank has been under fire and has had a lot of mistakes and breaches and whatnot over the last 5 to 8 years. And I keep saying, when are you going to ditch them? And he finally said, I think I'm done with them. He said, I just don't know where I want to put the accounts. And I said, a community bank or a credit union? Hello. So we'll see.
It's a big shift. It's a big shift to change all that. That's for sure.
It certainly is. I mean, and the big banks have some advantages, I'm sure, but none that can't be replicated in the community banking institution realm.
Yeah, I agree. Lorraine, it has been an absolute pleasure. I've loved our conversation today. I hope to have you on again. Thank you for joining us on Banking on Experience.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Banking on Experience. Remember to tune in each week and subscribe, where we aim to simplify work, drive growth, and deliver on experience.